Discovering the truth about ourselves is a lifetime's work, but it's worth the effort. Fred Rogers. So to begin this exploration, I wanted to make videos discussing the frameworks that I use. And there's the three of them I talked about in the introduction. And so the first one that I'm going to explore and explain is the internal framework. And for that, the language I use is the core. This is very much similar to thinking of the soul or the self. This is the core of who you are, what makes you you. And the reason why I like using the language of the core is that I see the core as having 3 to 4 layers, and I'll explain how I differentiate those shortly. After I go through the layers of the core, I want to go through the purpose of the core. Why do we care? Why do we need to know about the core? What does it help us with? How does it help define who we are? What can we do with it with a better understanding? After that, I'm going to get into the conflicts of the core that exist, and those are both internal and external. And they show up in many different places, and they also play a big role in interpersonal conflict as well. But that'll come into the next framework video on connection. After that, I'm going to go through and how we can understand our core, how we can get to know ourselves better and be able to differentiate what are the parts of us and what are the parts that are not us. And then finally at the end, I want to reflect a little bit on religion and the core, how religion sees the self aspects through a variety of different religions. So, to kick things off, let's go take a look at the layers of the core. So, the 3 layers, and I'll explain which one is split potentially. The first layer that we have is the sensational layer, this outer layer of ourselves. This is what it is about us that it's our characteristics. It's the physical attributes of who we are. It's the senses that we have. It's how does a banana taste to me? How does the color red look to you? It's those kind of explorations where all of our senses are differently and we all experience the world differently as well. In addition to that, our emotional responses, where for one person, something may make them fearful or jumpy. For someone else, a different thing may cause them joy, but for somebody else, it might be more neutral. So we have this sensational layer in how we interact with the world. It's this medium that exists between ourselves and everything outside of ourselves. And so this layer does have a big importance in how we interpret different inputs. And so that then gets fed into what I'll call the internal belief layer. And this is one that can be split into 2, as I can see where you can have internal beliefs about yourself, but then there can also be internal beliefs about things external. So for example, this could be your preferences, cultural beliefs and customs, your desires. So for me, I prefer hockey, but for somebody else, they may prefer basketball. And that's an internal belief of I enjoy this over that. It's just an external belief. It's just a preference there. And then there can be more internally focused ones of think of for your desires of am I wanting to become a mechanic or am I wanting to become a biologist? There's these different desires that exist within you that are only for you as well. These aren't desires and beliefs that exist in other people. They might be shared in some regards, and this is where I believe cultural beliefs and customs come into play, where for some people, they may believe it's important to take off their shoes before they enter a house. For others, it's okay to keep them on. And that might change on circumstances as well. For some people, they want to hold the door open when somebody is 10 feet away. For other people, they believe it's respectful when they're 100 feet away. For some others, they might see holding the door for somebody 100 feet away as a way to just be slightly cruel by making them run a little bit faster. We all have those different beliefs that are just for us, and they can both be about things external to us, where it could be what sports we like, what foods we like. Anything you can think of that exists in the world, if you have an opinion on it, that's one of your internal beliefs. And then you also have those internal beliefs that are from within you. And so that's where I differentiate this layer, where you can consider it to be a potential fourth layer as well, where it's internal beliefs about things external to yourself, and then internal beliefs to things internal to yourself. And then finally, the last layer is what I've called the divine core. And for some people, it might be like, why are you using the word divine? There's an association with God in there. And when I first had thought of this, I tried going through with some of that. But I sort of see this, and I'll explain that more in a different video, but for now, this divine core is what exists between everybody. It is common to all of humanity. It is the uniting beliefs of humans. It is the defining characteristics of the internal beliefs that we have as a human. It's the base of who we are. It's upon which everything else is built. And so this can be things like, and a lot of them, how I'm going to phrase them is in a selfish way. And the reason why I do that is I think there is a really strong argument to be made that why would we do something if we don't feel a benefit to ourselves? So I want to frame this in a way that it works in a selfish manner, but also can be used in a positive way as well. So I believe I want to live fulfilled. That's something that I believe every human has. I can't think of somebody who wouldn't want to live fulfilled in life. Another one being, I want to be respected. And I want to phrase it that way for this exact reason, where if I say I want to show respect, that can be detrimental, and in certain situations, people may not want to show respect, but if it says I want to be respected, and I don't think there's many people who'd be like, oh yeah, you know what, I don't want to be respected ever. And so this is where this divine core comes in, where it's these beliefs that exist deeper down. It's sort of going to understand who we are as humans, and I think this is sort of in where a lot of the communal religions take their focus into what beliefs exist between everybody. And I'll touch on that a little bit more in the next video for the external framework, as it plays more of a role there in how we connect with one another. But I think there is also a role in how it works for us as individuals as well. And so that's where I get into the purpose of the core. Why do we care? What does our core do for us? And I think by knowing our core more, we can live more fulfilled. We can feel more true to ourselves. We can feel that we are living in alignment with who we want to be now and in the future. And by knowing our core, we can also know how we want to connect with one another as well. Again, for the next video, but just to talk of how all these frameworks interrelate, is this core sort of defines what matters to us, and then what matters to somebody else, and where do we overlap. And as we get to know ourselves as well, when we understand our core, we're able to create these better boundaries for ourselves. We can create a stronger system to protect what is important to us as we learn what is important to us. As there are many times where we might not be sure, and then we get hurt through that process. And so that's where I think it's really important to understand our core and build out from there. And if we can take those steps to get to know ourselves better, hopefully then we can exist more as ourselves out in the world as well. And so now I want to get into the conflicts of our core. And I'm going to start with internal. And some of this, for some people, it may sound familiar. Probably a large influence for myself is the book No Bad Parts by Richard Schwartz. Hopefully I have that right. It's a great book, but it talks about looking at ourselves through internal family systems and psychology and looking at us as parts of ourselves. And so when I look at internal conflicts of our core, I think of it as when there are multiple parts of us that more or less are just in conflict. So an easy example, I want to eat a bowl of ice cream, but I also want to stay healthy. It creates this internal struggle of what actually matters to me, and I may not know the answer, and I might struggle with it a little, and I might beat myself up if I find out I chose wrong. In some situations, I'm more than happy to reward myself with a bowl of ice cream. But in other situations, if I've been eating badly all day, then you know what? I think it becomes more important to be healthy. And so there becomes this give and take of listening to those aspects of our core and understanding that even though there are parts of our core that are in conflict with one another, we have to recognize that they are both a part of our core. They both have a place of existence. They both have a purpose for who we are. And I guess I'll talk about it now. And I think this is something, we take a look at something like the 7 deadly sins. Are those things that exist separate from ourselves? Or are those attributes that actually exist within our divine core that are just true to humanity? Is it wrong that I want to strive for more, that I want to push myself for something greater? Is that not just greed? Can the appreciation of beauty and looking for any sort of aesthetic, could that be considered lust? To take pride in who I am and embody who I want to be and believe in that, is that something that is wrong for ourselves and doesn't exist within us? Or is that just a part of who humans are, where we are prideful creatures and we want to be proud of who we are inside? And I think that's something where we can take a look at these traits of humanity that can be seen as evil, and we need to really reflect on them of if they are evil or they are truly a part of ourselves, but when we don't work with them and only see them as bad, that they create this sort of chaos where if I can understand, okay, you know what, I do want to strive for more, I'm going to be greedy. Can I set myself up in a way where it's not detrimental to myself and not detrimental to those around me? And I think we can get there. I'm not sure of all the steps, and I think that's honestly a big one right now, where currently it feels that society is very self-focused and focused on wanting more. And for what reason do we want more? And that's one of the conflicts of understanding, okay, why does our greed want more? Why do we want to be prideful? And listening to those sort of elements can help us uncover the actual beliefs within ourselves. Now, second to that, we have the external conflicts. And I think this is one that is covered a lot in psychology and sort of referenced more as it's used a lot in the inner child terminology, where there are these aspects of ourselves that we carry forward from others. So, if I'm told on Sunday, you must rest. If I don't rest, I'm a bad person. I mean, this is a story in Christianity that is talked about, and where people of the Jewish faith believe that Sunday is reserved for rest. And you know what? That is a totally fine belief. There is nothing wrong with that. But is it necessarily right for everyone? If I really care about being able to put in time on a passion project, and the only day I have available is Sunday, well, what's going to be more true to myself is taking that day to rest or taking that day to put time in. And I think we can also look at why is it important to other people, and if that's been ingrained into us, what are the actual benefits that are being tried to be passed along? So in the case of resting on Sunday, it could be that, we do need to take time for ourselves. If we don't take time for ourselves, we will encounter burnout. We won't be feeling as much as who we want to be. And so we need to be aware of that as well. Of that part is probably beneficial for somebody. That part of their core is beneficial for them. And for what reason is it beneficial for them? And then how can we work that in a way to be beneficial for ourselves as well? I think this is where a lot of cultural and religious customs come in, and people take them to be parts of themselves, but it may cause more harm at times if they don't find the reason why. And so that's where, when you're looking at the external conflicts, being able to recognize, is that a part of who you want to be, or is it a part of somebody else who has passed that along to you? And you need to discern how to make that relevant to yourself. And so this is where, when I look at things in the future, I will take a look at how these conflicts arise within ourselves and how they affect other people too. So then moving on to how we can understand our core. And I think there's a few ways that we can do that. The first being from our sensations, from our emotional responses. When we feel that something makes us happy, take a moment and be like, why did that make me happy? Why did that make me angry? Why did that make me sad? And there's an importance in that of, we are going to feel these things. It is a part of who we are. Let's take that time to get to know it. And then same with looking for deeper meanings for things. And I'm not saying all the time, but I'll get to the story after, because I realized I was just a bit of an idiot in not understanding my own core. And it led to me being an idiot and getting more upset than I should have. And then same with looking at causes of fulfillment. If there's something we're working on and it feels great, why does it feel great? Same with the loss of fulfillment. If there's something that has been going on for a long time and it has felt great to you for a long period of time, but it's sort of lost that luster, taking a look at that and sort of reflecting on what changed for your core belief that's no longer there. And I can talk on that one a little bit more as well. And then finally, pain. And pain may fall under an emotional response, but I think pain is an extremely useful tool for humans to sort of pinpoint what our boundaries in life are, of where are our lines. And there's also a point of pain leading to this feeling where we can overcome it in some aspects, and being able to feel that we choose ourselves when, you're going for whatever you like to do for working out or any sort of activity. When you push through that little bit of physical pain to achieve something more than you thought you could, the amount of fulfillment you get from that, and to sort of recognize, okay, that pain was there, but why did it feel good? And so one story that I want to tell about understanding my core. So when I first met my wife, there's this movie I love very much, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, with John Candy and Steve Martin. It's hilarious. The message of connection and care for others is one that resonated very deeply in me. And so I loved it. And so when I was first getting to know my wife, I was like, hey, let's watch this movie. I love it. It's great. End of the movie rolls around. I'm enjoying it, having a great time. I ask her how she liked it. Meh. She didn't really care for it. She didn't really enjoy it. And I was like, oh no, why doesn't she enjoy it? This is such a great movie. And so I'm going through all the best parts, all the funniest parts that I thought. And for her, the humor just didn't hit in the same way. And looking back now, that's totally fair. There's some kinds of humor that don't work for me, but they do for others, and that's okay. But I sat there and I was going, this is not okay. How can she not like this movie? It must mean she doesn't like me. And it was where my enjoyment of that movie, I had coupled it with this core belief of caring about others, of trying to understand who people truly are and getting to know who they are, what is their core, what matters to them, and just trying to connect. And so when she said she didn't like it, what I had ended up hearing is that she didn't like that part of myself, and it didn't make any sense. I'm like, isn't this supposed to be a good thing? But I had to take that moment to decouple that part of myself from the movie, to understand, oh, it's actually, this movie represents these core elements for myself, and I was just taking this external thing as representation. So somebody didn't like that, then they didn't like that aspect of me. I think this is where it's also important to, through understanding our core, be able to decouple ourselves from the external symbolism that we use for it. Where, for me, hockey may be a symbol of teamwork, a symbol of camaraderie, a symbol of hard work and effort and giving your all for a greater goal. And then if somebody tells me they don't like hockey, but I haven't decoupled that from myself, then I might see that them as saying they don't like those things. And I would go, well, then I wouldn't want to associate with that person if they didn't want to, if they didn't care about teamwork or camaraderie or working towards a greater goal together. But that's not what they're saying. Maybe they just don't like the cold and they don't like hockey for that reason. And that's okay. So being able to learn more about our core allows us to decouple those aspects that exist in life that people do have strong opinions about. And we can start to work beyond that to get to the core issue. What is it that people are truly arguing about? And we can see that throughout history where we have these people fighting over something, but both are technically fighting for the same thing at the same time, where they believe they're right and they believe in, say, freedom, for example, and both sides, they don't like the other side because they think they're infringing on each other's freedom. But they both just want freedom at the core. And so because of this external representation, they aren't able to find that. And it's upsetting and it's disappointing that that's what ends up happening. And so I think there's just a big part of using this framework and thinking about yourself in terms of your beliefs and what matters to you and being able to parse out. And I think this is where the internal versus external layer that I talked about, if there's something external that you have a belief in, like I have a preference for X, taking a look and trying to understand that internal reason. What is it I value or what is it I believe in that is represented by what is external to myself? And so this is something that I had to do. So I love playing games. I have for a long time. And as a teen and young adult, gaming was extremely fulfilling for myself. It was that it gave me everything that I needed at that time, and I had so much fun, and it was some of my best years gaming. But as I've gotten older, it's changed. And gaming in the same way, where I dedicated lots of time to it and spent lots of hours to get better, worked with others on larger projects in the game, it didn't bring the same sort of fulfillment to myself. And I had to take a look at, and it was this example of the loss of fulfillment, where why isn't it hitting the same anymore? And I could just keep bashing my head through and through, keep trying, and I was on and off for gaming a lot. But eventually I had to sit down and think, what was it that actually matters to myself? And there are some aspects that were still represented in it, where it was working as a tool for working together with others, learning about like a team struggle. There were aspects of optimizing and understanding a system and how to improve myself. That was a great aspect of it. But then there were also these negative aspects of where I used it to cope with anxiety and depression. And so at times it would leave a bad taste in my mouth, where it would feel like, oh, I'm gaming just for those reasons to cope. And I'm not doing it for those positive reasons, as they didn't feel as fulfilling. And so it led to this break in it. And more or less, when I looked back and for gaming, it gave me something I could do for others. But now when I want to do something for others, it's in a different way. I think there's better ways that I can contribute. And if I'm putting my time into gaming, then I'm not putting my time into those. And that sort of takes away from who I am, where if I'm gaming, I'm not spending time with my family. And that's sort of where I want to prioritize my time now. And would I still love to game? Absolutely. But because it doesn't provide in the same way, I had to sort of go through and understand what of it was important to me and how can I still keep that. And so when I game now, I want to game with others. If other people want to game with me, there's a board game night, I love it. I'll always be there for that. I get so much joy and fulfillment from there. There's no issue. But gaming by myself, it's not the same anymore. So I've had to let it go in some aspects. So all that's to say, take some time, get to know your core, think about it through this, try to think of it through this framework where you identify what things are true to yourself, what is making you you, what are your beliefs, what are your values, what are the ones that are for you, what are the ones that you think should be shared between people, what are the ones you do share with other people, what are the ones you share with your family, what are the ones you share with your community, what are the ones you think you do share with all of humanity. And I think through that, you'll be able to understand yourself better and be able to make decisions that lead to a higher level of fulfillment. That's my end goal, honestly. I want people to live more fulfilled, as I am doing what feels fulfilling to myself now, and I love it. And so finally, just sort of wrap things up, I do want to talk about religion and its work in our core and how religion tries to understand it. And I think this can be encapsulated in a few ways. In a lot of faiths like Judaism, Islam, Christianity, we are more or less represented by God. If there's a Quran quote, and remember your Lord within yourself, humbly and fearfully. I'll try to remember the rest, but I'll put it up on screen. And so with that quote, it's sort of about having God within you And sort of, if God exists in all, then everybody sort of has the same existence within them. And then there are many others where you can go to Hinduism, where it talks about the Bhagavad Gita. With the mind harmonized by yoga, he sees the self abiding in all beings and all beings in the self. He sees the same everywhere, where it's talking about if he sees the self in everyone and all beings in that sort of core, then you can sort of find that way of connection both to yourself, to something larger. And then there is one that's a little bit unique. I think that's when we talk about Buddhism, where it's actually about giving up the self, giving up the ego. And where I think this doesn't so much conflict, but it's a different way of looking at it. If we look at somebody who practices Buddhism, they are still them. They still exist as who they are. They're not lacking any sort of personality to them. But I think it follows under the path of where they're disconnecting from those external beliefs, and they're bringing it more into the internal of who they are and letting themselves exist truly free of any chains outside of themselves. And so I don't think it's so much as a disagreement between, but just a different way of looking at it. And I think there are a lot of things in Buddhism where it does reflect on the self and how to let go of it and trying to understand what that means. And that's sort of what I've come to understand so far in terms of if we can, to give up the worldly possessions. And if we can do that, we will eventually reach a point where we do only know ourselves, where our beliefs are fully based on who we are. And I think that would be amazing. To not have any of what we are be based on something outside of ourselves, where we have control and power over who we want to be. And in the Tao Te Ching, it says something similar. Those who know others are intelligent. Those who know themselves are truly wise. Those who master others are strong. And those who master themselves have true power. And that's what I want for everyone at the end of the day. I want everyone to have true power over who they are and who they want to be. And so with that, I hope you enjoyed. This is the internal framework for our core. And so the next video will focus entirely on the external framework, looking at connection and trust as sort of this currency that we exchange between people. But for now, thank you for watching. If you've made it this far, awesome. I appreciate you. And thank you for existing. Have a good one. Bye.